I want to move on to a topic that doesn't get any coverage. Here is a preview clip that is up right now on statuscoup.com for members only. I'm not going to play the whole clip, but here is a documentary, why you haven't seen Ty that much. He's trying to finish our Flushing of Flint documentary. Here is a preview of the Flushing of Flint. In this clip, I'm talking to a Flint resident who, like dozens of other Flint residents, had their water illegally tested by the state of Michigan to manipulate the data to make the lead numbers look lower. Here is a clip from the Flushing of Flint. You could watch the whole thing by going to statuscoup.com/join. Folks that came in the first place, were they the core people with the vests?
They had the vest.
Were you watching them when they did it?
Yes, of course I did.
Now, when they came in, did they test just your kitchen or other rooms too?
Just the kitchen.
And did you see whether at first did they turn the water on and put the...
They turned on the water and let it run.
How long?
Oh, approximately 3 minutes.
Did you know that the EPA regulation is that it has to be stagnant for 6 hours?
I understand the EPA. In other words, this is what I want to share with you. I'm not ignorant at all.
Now, the first time they came...
Which one? Which for the water?
DEQ, Core, whoever was in the kitchen and tested.
Right.
Now, what are your thoughts on the governor? Because
he's a pimp.
We just spoke with one resident.
He's a pimp.
Oh, wait. Who literally had the lieutenant.
I'll say it again. He's a pimp. A pimp is going to deny all truth as long as the pimp gets what he wants. They'll give you the illusion that they're doing something for you.
To you, the people of Flint, I say tonight, as I have before, I am sorry and I will fix it. You deserve to know that the buck stops here with me.
They were too technical. They followed literally the rules. They didn't use enough common sense.
Let me be blunt. This was a failure of government at all levels. I'm not going to point fingers or shift blame. There's plenty of that to share.
Snyder says the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality and the federal EPA didn't properly address the problem of lead-contaminated water when they learned about it early last year.
There were major failures here. And if you look at it, it was people being much too technical, not having a culture of asking the common sense questions. Well, that's a huge bureaucratic problem, and it's part of the problem with culture in government. There are a lot of wonderful people in government, and I've been trying to...
You did appoint these two environmental bureaucrats in Michigan, though, didn't you?
We had what we needed in place to prevent this from happening.
Really? But then why did it happen?
Because the state didn't implement and enforce appropriately.
It's something different to have this continuing dialogue to say it was solely us. This could have been stopped sooner if other people could have also spoken up.
I've had about enough of your false contrition and your phony apologies, and there you are, dripping with guilt, withdrawing your paycheck, hiring lawyers at the expense of the people, and doing your dead-level best to spread accountability to others and not being accountable. It's not appropriate. Pretty soon, we will have men who strike their wives saying, "I'm sorry, dear, but there were failures at all levels."
So I lied. I played the whole clip for you. If you become a member, you will get behind-the-scenes content like that. You will get teaser clips before we release it to the public. That was a shorter clip, so I played the whole thing. There's a few things that I want to address about that clip. And now it is ex-governor Rick Snyder. He is no longer the governor, thank the Lord. Number one, what Morning Joe didn't push back, and by the way, that's Ty Bayless, who's producing and directing the documentary. We're in a fight right now, but I'm sure we'll make up. This was a privatization scheme. This was a privatization scheme. The reason that they were even going to the Flint River in the first place was because they were building a privatized water pipeline. It was called the Karagandhi Water Authority. So they were moving to the Flint River water. This wasn't a problem of bureaucracy. This was, Flint is poor. is predominantly African American and 42% impoverished, and that's just the number, the numbers we know. It's, if you go to Flint, it's way worse than 42% as far as impoverished. So essentially, they didn't really take it into consideration, the governor or the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, like they would if they were doing this in, let's say, Ann Arbor or Grand Rapids. It's Flint, so let's just put them on the Flint River water, which had an industrial dumping legacy where General Motors had dumped its waste products into the Flint River since the early 20th century. You have all sorts. If you live in New York, the Flint River is like the Hudson River on steroids. It's so toxic. But it wasn't necessarily the Flint River being so toxic. The Department of Environmental Quality, which Rick Snyder is in charge of because he's the governor, the Department of Environmental Quality, to save money, again, because it's poor people, so let's just skim on the money. They did not add the proper corrosion control chemicals into the Flint River. Corrosion control chemicals are added into the majority of water bodies. By law, they're supposed to be put into water bodies to prevent stuff like lead or other things from attacking the water service pipes, the pipes underneath the ground where the water travels into your home and out of your sinks. They didn't add those chemicals, again, because it's a poor neighborhood and they didn't give a damn. And by the way, the Department of Environmental Quality, when Rick Snyder tries to point to the EPA, it is in writing. Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, Rick Snyder's agency, they lied to the EPA that they were adding the proper corrosion control chemicals. When asked, they said, yes, we do have corrosion control in place. That's why multiple members of the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality are on trial for manslaughter or pretrial. So the reason we're doing the documentary, Peter's not bored. I just know more than he does, but we're going to get his thoughts. The reason we're doing the documentary is not, part of the documentary is explaining how we got here, and then we're presenting, not only did Rick Snyder and his agency poison the residents of Flint, they then covered it up. I'm not kidding. We knocked, sorry if I'm regurgitating to the audience that is here, but we do have new viewers. Jen and I, Jen, my business partner, who's not in today, and she'll be out for a little bit, we knocked on 450 doors. We did something very drastic. It's called journalism, not the kind of journalism that, says, oh, gas, better, Jared Kushner and Steve Bannon had a lunch. Gas, breaking news alert. No, we knocked on doors to find out if the numbers that the state of Michigan were putting out there, because they kept putting out there that the lead levels are improving. Well, we talked to 150 residents. 150 residents. And guess what? 35 of them had their homes tested illegally by the state of Michigan. The majority of them, we found that the state of Michigan, that same Department of Environmental Quality that forgot that minor detail to add corrosion control treatment into the water, they went into those residents' homes and they ran the water. It's called flushing, right before taking lead and copper samples. When you flush right before taking lead and copper samples, you're basically flushing out the evidence. The EPA, in our story, the EPA on the record told us if a lead and copper sample is being taken for compliance with EPA regulations, the water's supposed to be totally stagnant for at least 6 hours, at a minimum 6 hours. So the water cannot be used for 6 hours in the home. Then the water has to be turned on and the sample has to be taken as a first draw, which means you turn on the tap immediately after turning the tap on. As soon as the water runs, put the sample bottle in. We found that the state of Michigan sent officials in. They ran the residents' waters, in some cases 30 seconds to a minute, in some cases 10 to 15 minutes. That is manipulating the data. Erin Brockovich is on the record in our story calling it criminal. Erin Brockovich is on the record in our story saying they need to toss all of the testing out, and redo it. They need to reopen all of the water pods, and these people that did it need to be prosecuted. I have lawyers not on the record, but talking to me in background that said, this is the closest thing legally that can be used for Rick Snyder. So far, he has escaped any criminal prosecution. But in 2016, he said, the buck stops with me. I'm going to fix it. That's what he said. Well, this is your agency who did this. Are we to believe that his agency went in, ran residents' water, in some cases for 10 to 15 minutes? By the way, the agency, here is the agency that I'm talking about, their own video instructions on YouTube.
Remember, do not flush any water from the faucet before you take the sample. To start,
wait a minute. What did he say there, folks?
Bottle while you were away at work. Remember, do not flush any water from the faucet before you take the sample.
Does anyone else find it odd that the state of Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, when I was reporting on this and when I was asking them all questions, anybody else find it odd that they literally deleted their YouTube channel for 5 days? Anybody find it odd that the state of Michigan deleted their YouTube channel after I had asked them about this video? Very interesting. So the point is, think about it this way. The bottom line is this. They flushed away the evidence. They manipulated the data to lower the lead levels, and then declare crisis over. And that's exactly what they did. Because in April of last year, they declared Flint's water restored based on this data. So I am going to make you part of my reporting team. Okay, are you ready to do the work of a reporter? So what I need you to do, I'm going to read to you. I'm done playing nice. There is a new attorney general in Michigan, and there's a new governor in Michigan. And I'm done playing nice. This needs to be investigated. People need to be prosecuted, frankly, that did this, and this cannot be buried. We have had Congressman Ro Khanna call for an investigation. We have had Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard call for an investigation. You got Susan Sarandon, Alyssa Milano, Sean King, celebrities, influencers saying there needs to be an investigation, all publicly, by the way. So I sent an email, which I'm about to show you, to new Attorney General Dana Nessel. In fairness to Miss Nessel, she's only been Attorney General now for 5 minutes, so I'm not saying she's dodging me, but maybe public officials, especially newly elected public officials, need a little bump from the audience to get the picture. So I'm going to read to you the email I just sent her, and then we're going to give you some numbers. And if you're confused by what I'm saying on what exactly we found, here's the email I sent the other day. Good afternoon. This is independent journalist Jordan Chariton, and I'm writing to make sure new Attorney General Nessel is aware of my investigative report in Flint that has drawn calls for investigations from Congressman Ro Khanna, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, as well as a slew of other influencers and celebrities. In our story, we have Congressman Dan Kildee on the record. He represents Flint in Congress, Mayor Karen Weaver of Flint, Erin Brockovich, plumbers, toxicologists, and residents. Over the summer and in the fall, I canvassed Flint and knocked on 450 doors, majority of whom were on Michigan Department of Environmental Quality's Sentinel testing program for lead and copper in water. The Sentinel testing program, folks, was the official group of homes the state chose. That was the state's focus group for which they would measure whether the water in Flint was getting better. Whether the water and lead levels were getting better. And these were the group of homes that they were passing off to the EPA to basically get permission to declare the water crisis closed, done, fixed, mission accomplished, and then they could shut down the free water pods. I found that the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality had sent officials into residents' homes on the Sentinel study and ran their water right before testing, ranging from 30 seconds to a minute, all the way up to 10 to 15 minutes. The EPA is on the record in my story telling me state officials were not supposed to be going inside residents' homes and testing for them. They were supposed to simply drop off the testing kits with the written instructions for residents to do the testing themselves. The EPA is also on the record telling me that this kind of testing is a violation of the federal lead and copper rule, which mandates that samples taken for an EPA regulatory compliance, which Sentinel study samples were, must be taken after water has been stagnant and not in use for at least 6 hours. And it must be taken as a first draw, immediately after the tap starts running. Not only did we find MDEQ had sent officials into residents' homes and improperly flushed their water lines before testing, which MDEQ's own instruction video says not to flush. I just played that for you. But in other cases, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality and the core program workers they trained verbally told residents to run their water for several minutes before testing. We found this combination of Michigan Department of Environmental Quality testing themselves improperly or instructing residents to test improperly in at least 35 homes. We also found instances where the state was putting homes on the Sentinel study that had full filtration systems in them. The homes were supposed to be tested without filters. I found a pasture that they tested had a full state-of-the-art filtration system, and they put them on the test. Totally.
Well, of course.
Totally wrong. What you're testing on full filtration. And I also found homes where the homeowner told me they had come in and flushed, explained exactly what happened. Yet, when I typed in their address on the online state website they have, where you type in an address, you get the numbers, what was the last lead number, when was the last time it was tested. Magically, these homes say never tested. By the way, this is an agency with a history of tossing out high tests. The widespread testing manipulation casts serious doubt regarding the integrity of the testing and the credibility of the data, and declarations that Flint is again meeting federal regulations for lead. Most importantly, children may still be drinking contaminated water based on this manipulated data. I'd like to speak with the Attorney General's office and answer any questions. I will be happy to provide our notes and names, addresses, number of residents. And by the way, I would swear under oath that this reporting is accurate. I have every single resident on our account, Jen and my account. I have every single resident on the record on audio tape.